Shalom, and welcome to Psychology of the Parsha for Parshat Noach. Although Parshat Noach is most known for the story of the Mabul, the flood, the great flood, I want to fast forward and focus in on the seventh reading, the seventh Aliyah, which speaks about a story that perhaps gets a lot less traffic, an underserved story. Perhaps I would suggest the reason be that by the time most people have exhausted their intellectual and spiritual energies on most of the Parsha, which speaks about the flood, too little attention is paid to this story, and it gets a lot less attention than it deserves. And this is the story of the Tower of Babel. In short, as the verse describes it, the people all spoke the same common language, and as they traveled, as it says here, they migrated from the east, and they found a valley in the land of Shinar, and they settled there. And there they conspired to do something which turns out to be so bad, so terrible, that God takes issue with it and punishes them. And the rest is history. It's all of us. You're listening to this broadcast in English. Others may not understand it, or not as well as you do. Others may be bilingual or trilingual, or more. And that's where the world, from that moment, and it was indeed some kind of punishment, some kind of imposition by God to disperse the people and make them speak different languages and force them to migrate to different places of the world and become separate nations. What was it that they did? Well, the verse tells us. They spoke to each other, they conferred, they conspired, and they said, hey, let us settle here, let us all live here together, and we're going to build a big tower, very, very tall tower, and we'll make ourselves a name. That's what the verse tells us. What's behind this story? What is it that they conspired to do that was so evil, that was so terrible? There is a plenitude of commentary and insight into this story that can give us an understanding, not only of what they did, but what we shouldn't do, how not to repeat it. I want to share one of them with you. The holy Or HaChaim. He lived in Tzfat, great Kabbalist, and he has a running commentary on the Torah. The Or HaChaim suggests that what they conspired to do turned out to be so evil because it's the antithesis of what God intended for the world. It just goes against, starkly against, God's plan for humanity and for the inhabitants of the world. What did they say? They said, let's all be one. Let's just all stay in one place. Just as we expand, there are realities. People have children, those children have children, and the grandchildren have children, and communities expand. But we're not going anywhere. So the way he explains it is we're going to take and build a giant tower. And the purpose of that tower is that you can see it for as far as you go. And thus, you will know that this is the tether pole. This is the epicenter of our congregation, of our community, of our settlement. And no one's going to go anywhere. We're just going to live here, stay here, so we can all acquire a name, we can all be together, and live here happily ever after. That sounds fantastic. That reeks with unity. Especially as Jews, we always talk about unity, 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 right? So what's so bad? What's so terrible with this? Well, the answer is that they knew clearly and very well that God's intention was not, God forbid, that there should be disparity amongst human beings. Rather, God wanted the world and continues to want the world to be inhabited. God wants the world people to migrate, to disperse all over the world, to inhabit the land, to generate, to cultivate good in the land that He has made, that He has created for us. In fact, as we learned last week in the Parshat Bereshit, and we repeat it every Friday night, that this is the world that God created, la'asot, to do. What does it mean to do? In everything He left just a little tiny bit for the human being to, so to speak, complete. And thus He wants us to go all over the world, to be there, to create, to grow, to generate. They knew this, but it was inconvenient for them. Moreover, the people on top would lose their power. Imagine, if people disperse, they'll create their own kingdoms. If people go elsewhere, they're going to take some of the resources, or perhaps that's what they feared, some of the riches, and take it with them. And thus there's going to be a vacuum, or a lack of power, a lack of riches, a lack of me, for my name, for me. And this, says the Or HaChaim, is his perspective of what their terrible sin was. What does this teach us? What does it tell us? Especially now, as we've completed the month of Tishrei, we're going into the Mar Cheshvan, to the bitter, so to speak, the bitter month of Cheshvan. We're going into the mundane year. We're going into the regular day-to-day. One may think, I've accumulated all that wealth of spirituality. And hopefully, and surely that's the case for all of us, the wealth of blessings and abundance of material blessings. I'm going to keep that for myself. I'm going to stay within me. It's about me and my family. And next celebration that comes along, next time I have an opportunity to enjoy some of this that I have accumulated, whether it's the knowledge, the spiritual resources, I'm going to keep it for myself. It's going to be about me, about my home, about my place, about only my community. I'm a good person. I'm going to share with others, but within my community. Comes the story and tells us no. One, of course, has to focus on themselves, on their family. You got to take care of family first, as the Torah mandates, even when it comes to charity, that one needs to take care of their own poor, if it's your family or your neighbors, the people in your city. But never ever restrict your movement and thus your giving and your influence just to you and to your place. May God give us always the blessing of having the proper attitude in how to share the many blessings that He bestows upon us. Shalom.